Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Show here on the Blue Podcast. It is a long overdue show that we have richly missed doing. I said the plan here during the New Year is to get the show back on the road every week. Now that me and George have managed to work in a schedule that's both of us, and I'm incredibly happy to do this show again. George, it's a pleasure to have you here again. New Year, new start for the show, and loads to talk about.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me as always, Josh, and thank you to everyone at the Blue Podcast. Obviously, you guys have missed us, I believe, over the last couple of months in our absence, and as Josh has said, plenty to get our teeth stuck into, and I hope you enjoy. So, yeah, thank you very much as always for having me.
It's been that long since we've done the show that obviously last time you were on the show you were ranting about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and now he's he's no longer the Manchester United manager. Obviously everything that you pretty much said from probably the day that we did the show pretty much became the reality for Solskjaer and ended up losing his job. It's obviously hard to talk about because it has been so long. But I will ask you about the man who's obviously currently in charge until the summertime, which is the German manager Ralf Rangnick, the man who is known to be Klopp and Tuchel's father, the one who created the Ganger Press. But it's been anything but rosy for Manchester United ever since he came in. For a mixture of different things, maybe his 4-2-2-2-2 just simply just isn't a good formation for the Premier League. With a mixture of certain players maybe not particularly playing up to standards and having an incredibly bad attitude to the point where Man United had to say Mike Phelan to rescue you to see if you're behind the chest of there's a lot for you to unravel with Manchester United. On the pitch, it's not very good at the moment. You just get past Aston Villa in the FA Cup there. You probably should have lost that game if we're going to be realistic with ourselves. And then off the pitch, all these behind media reports, it's even worse. It's like a point blaming it at Randrick. People blame Ronaldo. Some people even blame McGuire for not being a good enough captain. Listen, the floor is yours if you want to try and ravel your opinion on what you think's happened to Manchester United on and off the pitch.
Yeah, so as you said, obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, since we last did it, that's quite some time ago, I think at least 5 weeks or so ago when he finally got the sack. As you said, something I've been calling for ever since we started this show, and indeed, as anyone who's sort of known me for even longer, I mean, it was sort of over 2 years that I was Ollie out, all back when it wasn't quite as popular to be so. I think ultimately, and I was, I think it's becoming more and more obvious as time has gone on, that, that all the things I was saying about Ollie were correct, and not to sort of, go over it again. But I also think that one of the things that we did say, and I kind of sort of let it slide at the time, was that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had left a good legacy for whoever came in next. And the reason I sort of let it slide was because, it was kind of like a nice thing for me to do because, I do really like Ollie, obviously as a person, and he was a legend as a player for us. And he gave me many happy memories, including obviously, and I'm sure most United fans who have a certain age as well. In terms of in the treble specifically, as well as there were plenty of other moments as well. But ultimately, he's left the club in a bit of a mess. I always, when people were talking about over the time that he was building something, that was another thing that I would often go in on and say that an opposing view that he was building absolutely nothing, and I think that it's become a lot more obvious that that's the case as time has gone on under Ralf Rangnick, who is, let's face it, no slouch and no novice to coming into clubs, and he's really struggling. Lots of reasons for that, but I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being in post for 3 years, at least 2 years longer than he should have been, has really let a malaise and a real slack attitude catch hold of all these players, and they're just simply refusing to pull their weight under Ralf Rangnick. But yeah, obviously the 4-2-2-2. I'm not necessarily sure it's about even the formation with these players. I think there's a real lack of work ethic, and we saw against obviously again viewers will have to cast their minds back slightly, but we saw some really good pressing in the first half. Obviously, the first game that Rangnick came in against Crystal Palace, but then the players seemed to give it up, and we haven't really seen that energy or press since that game. So the players do know what they're supposed to be doing because they showed it in that very first game. It's clear that they just don't have the motivation to do so, or potentially not the brain cells to do it. I think that's the sort of issue I've got with a lot of our players, is that we've not got enough intelligent players. I've said that for a long time, and it's just the decision making's often poor. We've also got plenty of players who are terribly out of form. Harry Maguire, as you know, he's been very, very poor. I mean, this is a player though that was, you know, obviously quite good at the back end of last season, and not only that, but also got obviously into this, as we know, into the team of the tournament at Euro 2020, obviously in the summer. So we know that there is a player there, but this season he's been absolutely atrocious. You've also got obviously McTominay and Fred doing the usual, being their usual selves. I mean, I've done it, and again, long-time viewers, I don't need to bore you with that, with how much I don't rate either of those two. But not only that, there's other players that aren't pulling their weight at all. I think Bruno has, again, something I've said for quite some time, and I think we're coming to bear with Bruno, is that he's never played well without Pogba. He just can't do it because Pogba's the only one that can feed him, and when he's got a Fred McTominay there, he just really struggles. And Bruno, I think, is one of those players again who is not as good as people think. I thought he was good, but he's just not as good as he's again in his brain. He's not good at decision making. And then the worst example of that, I think, probably the player that's playing the worst. Well, Maguire actually is running him a close. They're having a competition to see who can play the worst. Is Marcus Rashford. I know he's got personal issues as well, so again, sort of not wanting to sort of go in too hard on him, but I think it sort of came to a culmination, didn't it, against Villa, which you've already referred to when we won, when he didn't go for a ball, seemed disinterested. But I think with Rashford, again, he's in absolutely terrible form, and he's also another player who doesn't have the brains to play for Manchester United. And again, that I'm not trying to be very harsh with that. I'm just saying that we've not got enough intelligent players. And anyone who sort of watches football for a long time will know what I mean by intelligent players. It means players who, in the correct moments, make the correct decisions and make them consistently. And that's what separates good players or players who've got talent from players who then succeed. And that's what obviously Ronaldo's got, but we've got far too many of the former category, the ones who don't think and play and don't try either. So it's twofold. They don't think, don't try, and also the other thing that we can't seem to do is tiki-taka. Obviously, Pep Guardiola would say it's only about two things: tiki-taka, pass and move. And we have players that can't pass, and we have players that don't move. And those are the two intrinsic things of football, and that's where our problem is. So Ralph Rangnick has to get the players to be able to pass, which they can't do at the moment, and he also has to get them to move and create off-the-ball movement. So those are the two things he needs to sort, and then we should see an upturn in results.
In terms of I think you make a good point, because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a manager. He didn't demand things from his players. He didn't demand them to press. He didn't demand them to use the ball wisely. It was a coach who went in and said, right. I think it was a rumor that his board was saying play for his shirt, play with heart. It was more about trying to motivate the players from a Manchester United perspective rather than a tactics. And Ralph Rangnick is the complete opposite, to where he will demand every blood, sweat, and tear from his players. Do you think that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's nice guy technique, his lack of tactical emphasis in training over the course of 3 years, along with Michael McKenna, and how the hell did McKenna get a job at Ipswich Town? I'll never know. Michael Carrick's obviously left. He ran away, and maybe he's seen something that no one else seen. And like Mike Phelan, who is assistant manager, didn't even watch the training. He doesn't even watch the What is Mike Phelan's an assistant manager, and the man doesn't even watch the training. Apparently, they watch the training anytime Solskjaer was out, which is mind-boggling. Do you think this whole coaching setup and the lack of tactical emphasis over the course of 3 years, which there has been players who came in, but obviously it's very easy for players to walk into a dressing room and kind of pick up what's been happening. So do you think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's approach over the last 3 years of Mr. Nice Guy, not a lot of demanding, compared to Rangnick, he is a proper manager, a German manager, and we know what German managers are like. Do you think that's where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's reign has had a big issue, to where these players are just not, mentally prepared, like when Thomas Tuchel came in and sorted Chelsea out quite quickly?
I think it's, well, to be honest with you, I could probably be, I think with United, it's always easy for me to go on for quite a long time because there are so many problems. There doesn't seem an end to it. Of course, there will eventually be an end, but it may be I'm, in many years where I'm dead, and I won't be able to see what happens. But because the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't seem to be there at the moment, in terms of positivity or the future. I mean, for me, it's not easy for me. It's not hard. Sorry, I should say, for me to go in on Ollie, because I've spent many years doing it. But I think it's, obviously he did change the personnel quite dramatically in the squad. But I think you make a good point when you say that whatever the status is in the dressing room or the changing room when these new players come in, they will adapt to that. That they can't just come in. And I think that's what's causing a bit of the friction at the moment, obviously with Ronaldo, because he's a player that demands exemplary standards. The best winner I think that I've ever seen in football. Best mentality of any player ever, and he's demanding things from players who would rather sort of slack off, because there's a massive lack of effort and lack of work ethic, and those are things that Ronaldo has made his name for, amongst obviously many other things. But that's why his work ethic is really clearly caused a bit of friction. But I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because he was there for so long, I mean, I sort of said that I think he got sacked on his 9th life. There were 9 times he could have got sacked, and he finally got sacked on the 9th one. So that was his 3 years in charge, when really he should have gone. We had, I think, when I wanted him gone, and to be honest with you, this was the very start of obviously the 2019-20 season, when we had, I think, the worst Premier League start we'd ever had, when there were some really, really bad results, when it was Pereira, Fred and McTominay all playing together in midfield. That was obviously, the sort of the second time that he could have gone, and that's probably when he should have gone. And it's quite funny, obviously, watching it back, because obviously he survived somehow. Bruno came in and things looked a bit rosy for a while, but there were still these big matches where he was making terrible tactical decisions and switches. And I think, to be honest with you, we're terribly. I also think, I have to give Ranić time, because he's only been there a few weeks. But I think sometimes, some of the players that he's picking, I think, are kind of after effects of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I still don't understand why Donny van de Beek isn't getting enough time, and I still don't understand why we keep on playing McTominay and Fred when they are very, very poor. We need to separate those two, no matter what. And just because they played relatively well against Crystal Palace hasn't translated across the board. But for me, as I said, it's a simple thing for me is that I saw it was particularly obvious against Wolves, where all the players kept on losing the ball. And there was also another game, I forget which one it was, where we lost possession the most amount of times we've lost all season. I can't remember which game that was. It wasn't Wolves. It wasn't Palace. It was some other game. But yeah, that's the case, is that we just can't pass. You've got too many players who are selfish as well. And particularly Rashford and Bruno come under that category. Players who try to do everything by themselves, and don't know how to make the smart decision. So I do blame the players quite significantly, and I think although it'd be very easy, but as I said, Ollie's legacy still lives on, the poor standards. But at the same time, we have to sort of turn over a new leaf somewhat and say that it's now on Ranić and on the players to actually try. And obviously we're still in the Champions League, principally thanks to Ronaldo somehow, doing his usual things and carrying Ollie on his back to get through to the second round. So that does present, people laugh obviously, because there are a few other clubs that will definitely have better chances. But obviously there's no reason why with our squad, and obviously with Ronaldo, who is Mr. Champions League, why we can't actually try and win that. But at the moment, the improvement isn't significant enough. And obviously we're starting, I think the Champions League starts in the end of February, I believe. So we've got a few weeks left, but I'm still not seeing the glimmer of hope with these players. And I'm not quite sure what they're working on in training with Ralph, because we don't see for me anyway. I don't see any improvement on our playing style whatsoever.
The one thing I find really funny, obviously, so Michael Carrick left, and then so you brought in some guy who was the New York Bulls manager or something from the MLS, and then obviously Michael McKenna somehow got a job in Ipswich Town. I don't know why Ipswich looked at him and thought, oh yeah, the guy who's been completely rumored to be atrocious at Man United, so let's bring him in. But anyway, and then you decided to replace him with Darren Fletcher. Now, I'm no Manchester United fan. But is Darren Fletcher not meant to be a man who's upstairs? He's not meant to be the technical director at Manchester United. So why is he a coach now?
I've got absolutely no idea. And what I would say at this point, and I think it's something that has been sort of said at some point, but against when I saw it, because every single time I see him, when I'm watching in that box talking to Ranić, it makes my blood absolutely boil, because all I think about with Fletcher is that he's part of the old regime, the failed regime. He was constantly talking and chatting, and he really is a sort of anomaly, or almost like a there's no logic to Darren Fletcher's progress at the club. Obviously came in, I think, I can't even recall now, but came in to, I believe, train some youth players only about 15, 16 months ago, and has somehow had a meteoric rise to becoming a technical director and also some sort of coach as well. And it just beggars belief. And obviously, again, obviously, again, our viewers might recall as well where Rio Ferdinand was talking about Darren Fletcher being, so everyone sort of used to tease and say that Darren Fletcher was Sir Alex Ferguson's son, because he always used to go around his house for Sunday dinners. And the thing is, I'm not so sure that's why I think Darren Fletcher's a bit of a lick spittle, and I think that's why he keeps on getting all these positions, because he's really well thought of in the club, and there's no, because his CV on paper is atrocious. He's got no CV whatsoever, and somehow he's getting all these jobs. So the sooner we can boot him out of the technical area, the better. Because, like I said, I don't want him any part of it. And my final sort of point is that I believe, I wouldn't necessarily put my house on it or whatever, but I would think that, and this is very scary, but I wouldn't be surprised if Darren Fletcher doesn't become our manager at some point in the next few years.
It's the thing about Manchester that makes me laugh, right? So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer goes, all right, and the next minute Michael Carrick's in charge, and everybody's thinking, yeah, but he actually did a good job. But then Michael Carrick leaves, and then you bring in some guy from America who no one's ever heard of. He's probably going to be irrelevant in 6 months' time. And then McKenna leaves, everybody's thinking, McKenna's left. Nope, hello, Darren Fletcher. Darren Fletcher just strolls into the cheers room with his wee earpiece in his head, and then just got wee Mike in the corner, who apparently doesn't even watch the training, but apparently he's a coach. Manchester United, man, that's a story. But last question to you, and it's maybe a bit of a relevant question at the current moment, but still, it's irrelevant and not irrelevant, because it obviously depends on where you come at the end of the season. At the moment, if you keep playing the way you're not really looking like a Champions League team who's going to finish out top 4. What do you think is a possibility for your permanent manager? Because United have to be looking for one. And obviously there's going to be a lot of ifs and buts. Are you in the Champions League? Are you in the Europa League? Will Ronaldo be there? Will Ronaldo not be there? So it's incredibly hard for you to obviously give a full-on answer. But what type of manager do you think Manchester will go for? Pochettino, who was incredibly likely to take over, but then PSG wouldn't let him go. Erik ten Hag's open to moving in the summer, but I said you'll probably need top 4 for that. Do you think top 4 is a massive, massive indication to who comes in the summer?
So I think if we do get top 4, I wouldn't be surprised if, because I think Ranić had already hinted at it as well, that he's going to want to stay for an extra year as manager. So I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen. I think that but again, as you said, it's not likely. It's not looking like at this current moment that we're going to get top 4. Well, I would say at this juncture, we're not too many points behind. In that respect, and as we know, obviously, Chelsea and Liverpool had a terrible season last season, particularly, but were able to sort of bring back, we're able to haul it back towards the end with some good results. So it does show that as we always say, the four big clubs tend to have the consistency that other clubs don't. Against that, though, you obviously do have Tottenham with Conte, which we will hopefully get onto at some point with regards to Tottenham and Chelsea. And the League Cup, which is why I've got the little title. My little title says "Sack all the refs," Yeah, as I said, I think it will depend massively on top four. If we do get top four, I do think Ranić will stay as manager. But in terms of who we're likely to get, I think it will be either Pochettino or Ten Hag. Obviously, you've mentioned, and I would prefer Ten Hag. Obviously, I'm not a massive fan of Pochettino. I think even now, I didn't even have the patience to sort of check the French league table, but I think PSG keep dropping points as well, so they're making the most one-horse race in their Farmers League look very difficult. So even Pochettino can't win even a one-horse race, it looks like. So
just to I'll double check now. The league in the French league is down to, it was originally 17 points. It's now down to 9. With Nice, who the Nice is obviously the Nice manager is the manager who managed Lille last season, so he somehow took a team that finished 11th in the French league to second place. He seems to be some goddess manager in the French league. Yeah, Pochettino was not very well. He's not a Manchester United caliber manager. I don't think he should have won something with that Spurs team.
Yes,
when that Spurs team was in their prime. But you put me on nicely. Moving on to Chelsea. Chelsea. Let's be fair. Even though they do play Manchester City coming here on the weekend, Chelsea are out of the title race, but they are in a League Cup semi-final. League Cup final. They got past the semi-final last night. They have a chance of winning the Club World Cup, and they're a team that could absolutely go all the way in the Champions League again. They seem to have the right joints. If you look at what Thomas Tuchel's maybe dealt with over Christmas, we had that COVID issue when I'm sure you'll probably remember the game we had to play against Wolves, which should have never gone ahead. Considering all these games have been postponed recently for injuries and COVID issues. Tuchel was made to play for 5 years on the bench with 2 of them goalkeepers. He's dealt with the Romelu Lukaku situation that obviously overwhelmed us about a week and a half ago. He's had a ton of injuries. Thomas Tuchel's done an incredible. You see how Chelsea have played and just how organised. Even when we switched back 4 recently in the last couple of games, we've looked just as good as what we have done. What do you think of the situation at Chelsea? Do you think Chelsea, they had a bad run of form, but every team hits a bad run of form. That is just football. It's Manchester City have had it, Liverpool have had it, the best teams in the world have had it. Do you think Tuchel hit that bad run of form along with the injuries, along with COVID? Do you think Chelsea maybe just hit? Do you think Chelsea's team were just not capable of going all the way in the end, or do you think that there was just a fortune of unluck for Tuchel?
So I think that your main issue, I think, is just scoring goals. I think that is your main issue. I think defensively you're relatively solid. I know obviously you have conceded a lot more relative, quite recently, but I think defensively when you have all the players that you need playing. Obviously, as you said, with like injuries and COVID and stuff, I think when you've got all the players I think defensively you're probably the best team in the league. Defensively, like I said, and as long as you have all the people that you need in place. But I think offensively, you just don't score enough goals, and I think that's where your problem is. You've obviously alluded to Romelu Lukaku. I did say at the time. I mean, obviously, it's. I think most Manchester United fans were aware of Lukaku's failings when Chelsea got him, and obviously that's why I was kind of going, yes, you take him, and we'll try and get like Haaland or someone like that, because Lukaku is not. His touch is just atrocious. I mean, obviously you all know that from watching him for plenty of times that he just can't. He's one of the most painful players to watch because he keeps on getting his touch wrong. And I think he's not hit the. I mean, how many goals has he scored? What, about 3, 4, something like that, over his time, with Chelsea. And I think that has been where your issue's been. I think up top you just can't score. Lukaku was supposed to, obviously, as we all know, was supposed to give you that title challenge, those goals that you were missing, and obviously he's been, instead of goals that you've been missing, that he's been contributing, he's actually been missing himself. But only had time to give interviews saying that he loves Inter Milan and he wants to go back, and all this other absolute nonsense, but which was extremely unprofessional. But I think with Lukaku, what you see is the fact. I believe he's still the player that's got the most amount of cumulatively, he's had the most amount of fees spent on him ever. in terms of obviously the amount of money that overall in his career he's had spent on him. And that tells you everything. It tells you that he's in demand, but it also tells you that clubs let him go because eventually they do, eventually they don't need him anymore. Eventually he's just not the right fit, and that's that again I think is the case for Chelsea. Positives though, because I'm going to be neutral here, is that you do have at least 3 wonderful midfielders who I would happily take, which are obviously Conte, Kovacic, and Jorginho.
And so, sorry.
Well, no, I said three. I said 3 wonderful midfielders, not Saul's kind of the odd one out. Particularly, obviously, we saw again relatively recently a match I was lucky to see again. Obviously, was Chelsea Liverpool, in which Kovacic had one of the best games I've seen. It was just peerless, brilliance from him. Obviously, capped off with a stunning goal, as we know, as well as just incredible play. And obviously, big fan of Jorginho and particularly, obviously, above all of them, obviously, Conte, I'm a massive fan of and always have been ever since, that amazing season, obviously, with Leicester, where they won the title. So you've got 3, incredible midfielders. Obviously, defensively, or as I said, when you've got the right players in there, I think, particularly Thiago Silva, and obviously, I'm a massive fan of Rudiger and have been for a long time as well. I think he's a player, obviously, I think is sort of potentially going to move, isn't he? But we don't know yet. It depends whether Chelsea sort of offer him the money. But he for me obviously is he's one of those defenders that's got all the attributes you want. Obviously a brilliant goal against obviously it was slightly lucky, but at the same time he can chip in with goals, but he's also incredibly powerful moving forward. He's got good passing and distribution. He's incredibly strong. He's a wonderful defender as well. So yeah, I think Chelsea have got a lot of positives to look forward to, and I think, as you said, I think the League Cup you'll probably win. It's probably going to be you against Liverpool. Let's be honest, because I don't think Arsenal are going to. So I think Chelsea have really had the beating of Liverpool both times they played them. I know they've both been draws, but I think Chelsea have been better than Liverpool in both those matches. So I think Chelsea will win the League Cup if they obviously turn up, which I should say in that final. I think they've got the better team. And as you said, they could go all the way in the Champions League and win ultimately as well. I think you'll probably, if I'm honest, I think it's difficult. Between you and Liverpool, I think are probably the ones that are joint behind Bayern Munich. I still think Bayern Munich are definitely the favourites overall, but I think Chelsea and Liverpool are probably just behind as the next sort of favourites of that. So I think Chelsea fans have got a lot to look forward to. I don't think the title race is definitely over. I know it. Let's be honest, it almost certainly is, but but it's until it's mathematically over. You never quite know. But I think City have just got that consistency, unfortunately, and even when they don't necessarily play well, as we know against Arsenal, they get the rub of the green in the decisions, which again leads me back nicely to my sack all the refs. And just my very final point, obviously on Chelsea, and particularly moving back to obviously as you said the semi-final. And that's why I've got specifically, I mean, I've had so many times to say it after almost every single match I tend to watch, but this sack all the refs I've got in my little title. It begged belief for me that Andre Mariner, the referee obviously for the Chelsea-Tottenham second leg, it begged belief that first of all he decides to give a penalty. He decides to blow up and give a penalty when it's not in the box. That's the first thing he tried to do. And the second thing was when the most blatant tackle, the ball literally moves totally the other way, and he somehow gives a penalty again there. It's just criminal. The state of the refereeing is absolutely criminal, and they've got no shame either. Mariner's terrible. Every single ref in the Premier League is absolutely atrocious, and it just ruins games. And I just couldn't believe that it just gets worse and worse. And yeah, it just mars the beautiful game, really, just having terrible refs that constantly make terrible decisions.
Well, but on to that, we're going to go to a bit of a funny section that we have to talk about. I have to mention this on the Golden Show. It's a bit of an AFCON referee performance that we witnessed. So let's start off. So he, first of all, awarded a penalty. That was never a penalty. He then let 9 second-half substitutes happen when there's only meant to be 3 per team. This is going well so far. He decided to have a 2-minute quilling break in the 78th minute. Why not? Why not? He obviously probably just had a bit too much shade the previous day. He decides to blow the full-time whistle on the 85th minute. Then he realised his mistake and he restarted the game. The 87th minute, he sent off a player for a very, very mild tackle. It was never a red card in a million years. VAR told him to go and review it, and then he could actually find the VAR screen to check it, even though he already checked it the previous 2 times. Then refused the VAR decision, and the red card stood, which is incredible. And then he blows the whistle early again on the 89th minute. Which is just incredible. And he blows early again on the 89th minute, and then AFCON wanted the teams to go out and replay the remaining 4 minutes of the game, but then it gets better. But then Tunisia refused to because their managers were already in the press conference. So yeah, that was the worst referee. A referee looking on the watch at 85th minute. Oh, it's time for the full time. Oh, absolutely. Well, anyway, moving on to the magic of the FA Cup. The FA Cup. So we've already briefly touched on the game between Manchester United and Villa, where Villa were probably incredibly unlucky not to at least push that game to extra time. Manchester United just about edging it. But I think one game I do want to talk about. Which I think was an incredible was I can't say their name, Kindermanster Harris, beating Reading. Obviously, Kindermanster are an non-league team. They're the lowest ranked team in the FA Cup going into the third round, beating championship side Reading. Now Reading are in disarray. They're in an absolute shambles of a football club. They lost 7-0 to Fulham yesterday, which is incredible. But a non-league side beating a championship club, regardless of where the championship club is situated in the league, no matter how bad their squad is, it is still remarkable for so many different reasons. Financially, preparation, fitness, just technology. This is why we love the FA. Except if it's Chelsea or Manchester United, this is why we love the FA Cup for results like this.
I still do love the FA Cup because, obviously, again, in my youth, it still was a prestigious competition. I think it's only been relatively recently, really, over the last sort of 20 years or so, that it's sort of lost its luster. But you still have you can see in the joy. Obviously, there were some other upsets as well, but you can see in the joy in the supporters of these clubs. You can see how much it means to them, and also in the players as well. So I do still love the FA and fully respect the FA Cup. I think it's just that obviously because of the financial implications of league position, I think that's where as times have moved on, I think that's where priorities have shifted, obviously, to league position and trying to ensure safety or trying to get top four or things like that instead of the FA Cup. But I still do love the FA Cup, and I'm still annoyed, obviously, that United haven't won it in, I think, how many years now? 5. That we haven't won it. So I would, that again, obviously, as we know, is probably United's best chance of silverware now. Trying to win that. So yeah, it's still massively important for me, and well done to Kidderminster Harriers as well for a brilliant result. And that is what the FA Cup's all about. It's just for these giant killings every single year, which we always get, and that's why we love it.
And obviously, they couldn't ask for they could have maybe slightly asked for a better job, or welcoming West Ham into their backyard. This is a memory that you think about Chesterfield. When Chesterfield came to show, yes, Chelsea dismantled them pretty much from the get go. I think we were on nil within 3 minutes. But even though they were 5-0 down, they went up the pitch and scored a goal, and the whole away end just went absolutely bonkers. These are memories that these players, the managers, the fans, the football club, cherish. They'll cherish it from the I can remember for years that went away to the champions of Europe and scored a goal even though they were 5-0 down. And Kinsamars have a chance to welcome West Ham to their ground, which is going to be a timid, hard, really gritty place to go to. And West Ham are likely going to have to rotate because they've got a lot of games coming up with the Europa League only a horizon. I don't think they're going to win because it's a Premier League opposition and a good opposition at that. But, if they go in and they say only lose 2-0, that's a win for these types of clubs, and it's a memory that they'll never forget.
Yeah, obviously, again, as you said, it's one of those things where it's all about the occasion. It's all about, if they know that they know what their likelihood of getting eliminated is, they know what the likelihood is of winning. So it's all about that sort of experience, the thing that will live on for the rest of their lives. And yeah, it'll just be a brilliant occasion to be able to say that you were there when obviously that match takes place, obviously against West Ham. And as you said, there is always that chance, isn't there? There's always in the back of your mind. I mean, even obviously when you were playing obviously Chesterfield or whatever, there's always that thing in the back of your mind where you think, oh, maybe this will be the right moment, because that's what there's no such thing as a team that's too big or has too much money to not eventually get beaten. So it's just that, and it just what I love about it as well is you have all sorts of different little stories as well and little subplots within the FA Cup, and you get to meet lots of different players and teams that you wouldn't otherwise think about. And I think that's what's quite nice, is because we get very set, obviously, as supporting Premier League clubs, we get very set in thinking about just the Premier League, or obviously about big teams around Europe. But it just reminds us that there are so many other teams that we can enjoy to watch, and it is quite interesting and intriguing to watch them as well. So that's another thing that I really particularly enjoy about the FA Cup.
Another result that was, let's be fair, that was completely and utter upset, was Cambridge United travelling to St James's Park and winning 1-0. And maybe, okay, the first half of Newcastle created some decent chances, but just couldn't put any away. But in the second half, Cambridge deserved to win that game. They created some good chances. They defended really, really well. And Newcastle obviously have have all their eyes on trying to get out of the relegation zone. And can we just say they signed Chris Wood today, which is a mind-boggling transfer. I don't really know how Chris Wood gets out of the relegation zone, but why Burnley let him go, I don't know. But anyway, that's a whole different saga. You put this down to maybe Cambridge were just more motivated. They had more ambition to win this game than Newcastle, or is it just a pure and utter embarrassment for Newcastle?
I still think it's fantastic for obviously Cambridge United. One of the results of the round, really. Incredible upset, and obviously a great show, a great story as well. Obviously with Ironside, who'd again obviously got the call from Alan Shearer to say well done after scoring the goal. So as you said, it was Newcastle did sort of create chances, but I think one of their problems, as we know, again sort of watching them persistently throughout the Premier League this season, has been scoring. And I think, again, they sort of found it. I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of the Cambridge United keeper is, but he was in absolutely incredible form, made so many excellent saves. And yeah, he was a real key as to why Cambridge United emerged with a clean sheet. And obviously, if you keep the other side out, you've always got a chance to get that one moment. And again, it seemed like all the stars aligned as the ball sort of was rolling around, and some terrible keeping as usual from terrible defending from Newcastle, and full marks for Cambridge. And obviously there'll be it's again just a fabulous result the FA Cup throws out. But yeah, as you said, for Newcastle, it's quite, I think Wood will do quite well for them. I know that might be slightly controversial, but I think he will do quite well for them. I think obviously St Maximin will enjoy having someone else to kind of shoulder the burden, because I think Wood has had quite a few Premier League goals actually, especially for a club obviously with Burnley, who create as we know, notoriously few chances. So it's he's not too bad as a striker. So I think he will do well. And I think they are preoccupied with sort of trying to stay up, but it is quite a weird decision for Burnley to let him go, because, it's twofold actually. It's weird for Burnley to let probably their best striker go, but it's doubly weird that they let him go to Newcastle, who most likely would use him to make sure that they would stay up and Burnley would go down. So it's quite a weird decision to me from both parties. But yeah, Newcastle are going to be obsessed with sort of trying to stay up, and I still do think they will do. But they've obviously got a few weeks left to try and buy as many players as they can to try and improve pretty poor squad with a few, obviously with St Maximin particularly, good players that will hopefully try and keep them up.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is one of I'm quite intrigued to hear your opinion on. And this is Antonio Conte's regime at Spurs. Now, if you look at the Spurs team, and they aren't playing very well at all. There's, you look at what Conte did at Chelsea, and you look at what he did at Inter Milan, and what he did at Juventus, etc. You're just not seeing that from the Spurs team. Now, yes, this probably isn't his squad by any stretch of the means. His players are probably nowhere near Conte's kind of level of demand, which is understandable. But you think about last night, for example, you look at that team selection Conte put out. He had one eye on the derby against Arsenal. It's like he just did not even trust his team to be able to bring back a 2-goal deficit against a really good team against Chelsea. It's kind of like he was, look at the goalkeeping mistake, the goalkeeper made for their goal. He benched Hugo Lloris. It's kind of like he was waving the right flag and saying, there's no chance we're bringing us back. I know this may seem like a jump forward, but Conte has already kind of came out publicly and started and speaking about his players, and said his actions. He's a man whose actions speak louder than words, and his team selection last night kind of didn't really give much optimise to how he feels about his team. Is there any chance he walks, do you think, before next season, or do you think he'll stick it out?
I think he will walk.
You think he'll walk?
I think he will go. Yeah, I think it's not. I don't think it's going to. I think him and Spurs was always going to be a unhappy marriage, because I think Conte does expect investment, and I think, as you sort of said, I think he's realised with Tottenham that there's a club there that might be in too dire straits. I think they might be. That they are in absolute. Obviously, with Harry Kane, in particular, has sort of fallen off a cliff, so to speak, hasn't he? And I think. I have to say, I do agree with him, obviously, resting all those players, actually, though, because as soon as I sort of saw that, obviously when Chelsea had the 2-goal lead from the first leg, I thought there's no way. There's literally no way that, if this was like, I don't know, like Man City or Liverpool against Chelsea and they were 2-0 got, I'd think, oh yeah, there's still a good chance that they could make it interesting. But when it's Spurs, I've got no faith whatsoever in Spurs at all. I think they're too reliant. I think Son is their sort of standout player, Spurs, and I think apart from him, they've got a real lack of quality. I think that's what Conte's struggling with, and it all depends, obviously, where they finish. I don't think they'll get top 4. I think, and in which case, probably Conte will be seen to as a failed, and there'll probably be an unhappy board meeting if he doesn't get top 4 in the summer. In which there's lots of shouting and sort of back and forth, and I don't think he'll get the significant benefit investment. So I think he'll be gone within. So I think he will not be Spurs manager by the end of this year. So I've given myself a good 12 months, but I think he won't be. I think he won't be in the Spurs role by the end of this year.
No, I do, because I agree, because I just don't think he's going to get backed. He's already came out and pretty much called Tanguy Nobile a bad player, and he's awful, and he wants him gone. Conte doesn't hang around, and Daniel Levy's just not going to give Conte what he wants. And it's just going to end in a disaster. Conte ship taking into Milan, had to start selling players. He had a complete argument with Chelsea when he didn't get who he wanted. He got back Yoko, Danny Jigward, and Morata, and he fell out of the board, and things went downhill ever since. He's a manager. If you don't give what he wants, man's gone. And Spurs are not. Daniel Levy's not going to crave into what he wants. It's not going to happen. And also, why Spurs give them Ryan Mason and his coaching staff? What's Conte going to do? Is he going to go up to Ryan Mason and go, what's the solution?
I think as well, just a player that Spurs have also been linked to is Jesse Lingard. So that sort of sums it up. I think they have his representatives have got in touch with Lingard's representatives, and they're quite potentially interested in bringing him to Spurs, and that's I mean, I know Lingard for many, many years, obviously, of watching United, and that is not a player that you're going to, that is not a player that's going to improve them massively. So they need, far, far better players. And I think Spurs have really got some serious rebuilding to do, because there was obviously, we've spoke at the very start of the show about Pochettino, and that he potentially should have won something with them, because I think back when he had them, they'd made some quite astute buys, and I think they really had some brilliant players. Obviously, I remember when, particularly in the sort of defence, when you had Alderweireld and Vertonghen, they were caught at times. You really did, and obviously, you really did sort of rate Spurs as well under Pochettino in those sort of golden years for Spurs, but obviously didn't win anything. And when you don't win anything, you don't get the best players unless you pay a lot of money for them. Which is obviously what Man United are trying to do. But obviously, so Spurs aren't going to sort of outlay the amount of money that they need to really compete. So Conte is probably not going to. We had thought that Conte was going to be able to make Spurs lose their trophy duck, but I think it's again going to be. There's no manager that's apart from maybe if they can get Sir Alex Ferguson out of retirement, that might be the only manager that can somehow get them across the line in something.
Spurs, and the thing is always Spurs, they somehow, in some way, got knocked out of their grip in the European Conference League, and by the Spurs way by forfeit in the end. They just Spurs are just a laughable club. They just have no ambition. In the semi-final, they're 2-0 down at home in the second, and your manager, even though my fly, playing a goalkeeper who's so mistake prone and causes them the goal in the end. And then you've got them getting knocked out of the European Conference League by two teams that are just awful. It's just a club that tries. It's like a club that tries to be ambitious, but they just aren't going anywhere. It's just the thing is, you say you feel bad for me, you don't. Spurs are just there to laugh at all the time for the Spursy decisions they keep making.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's just incredible, and obviously, as we're sort of on the sort of FA Cup thing, obviously Arsenal as usual. Again, I think a club that have not had been relatively good under Arteta recently, but obviously back to same old against Nottingham Forest. I think obviously when we from the FA Cup draw, I think we all thought with Forest. We all remember a few years ago when Forest humiliated Arsenal, and it was the same old story once again. That's another club that are really in a bad place. Arsenal as well. I mean, it's a bit like sort of throwing stones in glass houses, obviously in terms of Manchester United, but it's just it beggars belief really with Arsenal that they can still throw out these results and full marks to Nottingham Forest as well. Obviously, that was another good upset in the FA Cup.
Have you seen that All or Nothing by Spurs on Amazon Prime?
I didn't. I've seen bits and pieces. I saw obviously when Danny Rose or whatever his name is was talking to Jose Mourinho, and he's saying, "I think I'm good enough," and Jose saying, "No, you're not." I also saw when he was talking to Dele Alli as well, and you've got that was so I've seen bits and pieces. So obviously again when he was talking to Dele Alli, and he said Dele Alli, and he was trying to say to Dele Alli, I'm this age, whatever he was then, like 50, whatever he was. I remember what it was like, and you need to try and. It was basically telling him to grasp the opportunity because we know that there's a player in Dele Alli, but we also know he's not got the work ethic, and Dele Alli clearly even since that has not listened to that as well. So I saw bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
I think one of the funniest bit was when Jose Mourinho first came into the Spurs job. And he had it on his TV screen about people talking about him and saying how he's a done manager. And Jose Mourinho just was like that, look at the screen. The biggest meme. I'm trying to find something here on YouTube, but a quick question about Spurs is: do you see Harry Kane staying, or do you think that's him gone in the summer?
I think he will go, but obviously it'll be nowhere near the amount of money they were asking for him before. Obviously, all this terrible form. I also don't think. I don't even think the City will want him anymore. I don't necessarily think that Harry Kane fits at Manchester City anyway, and I don't think that they'd want him anymore. So I'm not even sure quite what club Harry Kane would go to. Like maybe Barcelona, maybe, because they'd potentially want a new player. But if you're looking around for which club would want Harry Kane, I struggle to think of one. He wouldn't fit in at Liverpool, obviously, because again, it's pressing, it's high energy, and Harry Kane's as slow as a tortoise. He wouldn't. I don't think he'd fit in at City because again, Pep wants players who are sort of quick on the ball and quick of foot, and again, Harry Kane's neither. And again, obviously with Real Madrid, obviously, they've got Benzema. Bayern Munich have got Lewandowski. So I'm not quite sure what club would even want Harry Kane anymore. maybe PSG. I mean, that might be a possibility because obviously Mbappe is, going to Real Madrid, as we know, so they might sort of bring Harry Kane in at PSG, and obviously you've got the Pochettino connection there, haven't you? So that might be the sort of most likely destination for Harry Kane, because it's clearly, but I think PSG would be getting a player that's, for me anyway, I think he's finished.
Well, I'm going to show you one thing before we wrap up the show. This is a good way to end it. It's. I
have the feeling that the game was important in the end, and in the end of the game, you are going to be here.
That shows the radio individual. People. That's how shows the radio inspired players against Manchester City. What a man. So that brings the end to the long overdue golden through the first one of the year. Definitely loads to come. So we'll be back next week. We'll be back the week after. Maybe not the week after that because we can never know what happened in this world. But George, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for having me, Josh, and thank you again to the Blue Podcast for letting me on. And just remember, guys, get the sack all the refs hashtagging on trending on Twitter to get rid of them again. But thank you very much for everyone that does tune in, and do remember to like, share, and subscribe as well.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the Blue Podcast. Help us get to 1K as we're getting there. We're I think about 110 subs off, which is remarkable. We're going to keep grinding, keep on pushing. And I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll be back next week to talk about how Manchester United still are losing games and how Chelsea are the best team in England. Thank you guys for watching.